Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown. Welcome to A Healing Morning. We're going to spend the next couple hours talking and feeling our grief with the idea that at the end of the couple hours together, you'll have a sense of healing. We're going to start off with Barbara. She's going to actually talk about the grief that a direct care worker experiences. So Barbara, take it away.
Great. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
We cannot.
No. Okay. Hang on. Let me back up here. Let's try this. All right. Let's try this now. How's that?
It's good. We're good.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Barbara Corley. I am a certified caregiving consultant, and I specialize in, I work with family caregivers, but I typically specialize with direct care workers, those who work directly with folks in the developmental disability population. Today, I just want to go through a few things just to kind of, for lack of a better description, kind of state the obvious in a lot of ways. So I think, as probably what maybe drew a lot of you to this, the direct care worker is really left out of the equation of grief quite often. And I think sometimes saying things that are obvious might be obvious, but I think sometimes little things get forgotten. So I hope you have some good takeaways from today's discussion. So it's not clicking forward. There we go. Just a quick summary about me. I have been a sibling to a sister with developmental disabilities since I was about the age 4. I'm still active in her care as a direct care worker for a Medicaid waiver program. She is 24-hour care, so she's pretty extensive. She lives with my parents. So I have the experience of direct care in terms of the logistics and the paperwork and all the requirements, as well as the family and the sibling connection. In addition to that, I am the wife of a disabled military veteran, and we've traversed quite a few situations over our almost 19 years of marriage. So we've dealt with post-traumatic, we've dealt with post-concussive from injuries, cumulative issues. If anyone knows anyone in the military, you know, it's they do a lot of crazy things, and gravity is heartless and the body really takes a beating. So sooner or later that kind of catches up to you. So like I said, I have been a direct care worker for a Medicaid waiver program since 1990. And I had worked for in a corporate setting until 2020, when I got my certified caregiving consultant certification through Denise and launched my business. I am currently a direct support professional. That's the term they use here in Ohio, but direct care worker liaison for my county. So I help direct support professionals get certified through a Medicaid waiver program, again, to help with the developmentally disabled community. My grief story, I'm just going to touch on briefly, and involves this little toad. He was my first dog. And if anyone has a soft spot for pets, you know, it can hit you pretty deeply. In 2018, he was diagnosed with 2 types of cancers, completely out of left field, and was given 2 months. So this has been my closest experience with how powerful grief can be. And as I was putting this presentation together and some of the tools that I talk about, it's like, as I was pulling these together, it's like, I didn't know these tools at the time, but I've used all these tools when we were in the process of losing him. I'm happy to say that he had 18 months and they estimated 2, he had 18 months of high quality experience or high quality life before we lost him. So I channeled a lot of what I'm going to talk about into that. And it's kind of interesting to look back in retrospect and see that I can speak to these tools directly. So I said we were going to start with some stuff that's kind of simple and it's kind of type information, but I want to talk about what is grief. And I pulled this definition from online, and it's deep sorrow, especially if it's caused by someone's death. The 2 things that struck me: deep sorrow. Okay, deep sorrow to me comes from connection. You have to have a connection to someone to feel something, a connection of some sort to feel deep sorrow. shared experiences, partnership, and a routine presence in each other's lives. And I think those 4 points at a minimum describe basically what a direct care worker does. The definition says someone's death. It doesn't say a family member's death. It's not limited to that. And I think that's where there are some assumptions made that a direct care worker is just in the situation caring for someone, and it's very mechanical, and they don't get involved relationship wise. I would argue it's hard to be involved in someone's life on that level, dealing with those types of experiences and not have some kind of a connection. Grief is based on an emotional connection, and that emotional connection can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. So I would argue to anyone who hasn't considered grief for the direct care worker, from that perspective. Some grief assumptions versus truth as a direct care worker. The assumption is only families experience grief because they've known the caree the longest and have the deepest relationship. Truth being, grief can affect anybody that's caring for the person's daily needs. Again, when you're caring for someone on an intimate level, on a serious level, with serious health concerns, that relationship is built. There is trust that's built. I would be surprised, or I know you could steel yourself to that, but it would be very difficult, I think, to provide care to anybody and not have some kind of a connection of some sort. Again, you don't have to be family to develop a close relationship with someone. And these might be, again, very obvious statements, but I think sometimes they need to be reiterated because we kind of lose sight of those. And again, direct care workers are often overlooked in the grief equation. You're hands-on when the family can't be, which creates a deeper experience. That the family, you may have experiences with the caree that the family member has not. Relationships are complex, and they're it's a very layered onion. So you may have a different relationship with a client than they have with their family. And you see the client at their best and their worst, which the family may not. Many clients may put on a brave face. So it's all of those little nuances that create a relationship that, when grief is involved, will have a lingering effect on you as that direct care worker. The other assumption is that direct care workers keep their personal feelings out of it when they're basically caring for their client. And again, I would argue that can be a tremendous challenge. The truth is, connections and relationships form quickly, because you're diving into personal situations with them on day one. And whether you connect with the client or not, you still stand witness to the good and the bad of decline. You may have a difficult relationship with a client and very hard to connect with a client, but it's still part of our humanity. It's very difficult to watch decline. You may know enough about that client to where you know what their life used to be and compared to what it is now. And that can be very emotionally challenging to stand witness to. So the tools that we're gonna discuss from here on, basically these are 6 stages that Denise created years ago. They specifically spoke to, in her early development, the family caregiving experience. What we have in discussions and realization have kind of come to realize is they're very versatile 6 steps. And they can apply to direct care workers. You can apply those same 6 to grief within the role. You can even apply them to your client or your caree's journey with you. What we're going to talk about today is basically how they apply to grief within the direct care worker role. And these stages can be applied regardless of your years of experience or the time you spent with your client. And the transition, what's interesting to consider is the transition times between the stages can vary. And we'll discuss that a little bit more. Most people, I think, are used to the 5 stages of grief. I would argue that this is different from that. This is almost a progression kind of through grief in the role that you hold. I'm hoping as we discuss these and dig into these a little more, it's kind of a challenging thing to describe, but hopefully as we talk through them, you'll kind of get a better picture of what I'm trying to describe here. So we are going to start with expectant. And basically what Denise did with these was each category has a word associated with it. And so basically I like to think of it as kind of the theme. So the theme for this, your word for this is ask. And when you are in the expectant stage as a direct care worker, this is where your client has been newly diagnosed, either with a serious health condition, terminal, regardless. So you're going to be in like, this is kind of, I kind of describe this as kind of the initial shock mode, at least it was for me. You're asking a lot of questions. I find comfort and I find power in knowledge. And the more questions I ask and the better understanding I have about things, the more I feel like I can settle into and channel my energies better. So this is the stage where you would ask, what does this diagnosis mean? Just because you've dealt with a client who's died in the past doesn't mean every client has the same issue. You might be dealing with an ALS diagnosis and you have no experience with that. Or it could be a dementia and Alzheimer's. You don't know what that looks like. Just because you're a direct care worker, you're not supposed to have all the answers right out of the gate. Your answers and your experience come with, exposure and experiences with each of these clients independently. So you're asking, what does the diagnosis mean? What's the decline going to look like? So you're kind of steeling yourself to the idea of there will be decline. I don't necessarily know when, but how do I prepare myself for that so that I can prepare my client as well as their family? What should I expect? How will my role change? You may have a very assistive role right now with a client. Well, as the decline begins, you might be more involved. What should you expect? How is my client coping? And how is their family coping? As a direct care worker, you're looked to as the professional. And whether or not you have experience with this or not, maybe it's the first client you've ever dealt with that's passed away or is on the decline. The family and the client themselves may not know that. So while, to Denise's point earlier, while you are facing grief from a professional standpoint, emotionally, you're going to experience it as well, because you have to kind of, in some circumstances, you may have to set your own feelings of grief aside to be the strong, the brave front for the client and the family, and be supportive of them. So this stage can be, I would argue, kind of dually draining, because everybody's trying to wrap their head around a diagnosis and what's coming and the anticipation. This is very anticipatory grief. The end is coming. I mean, granted, we all are going to die at some point, but in this stage, someone has been given almost like a date on the wall or a timeline. And so family and the client themselves start the anticipatory steps of grieving. As a member of the team, you may be relied on to guide the process. And that can be emotionally exhausting, because not only are you trying to process it, you have to be strong for them as well. And the family may lean on you for your knowledge and experience. And what will you need to know to support them and your client? So you can see this stage of expectant it's very heavily based on ask. It's about questions and what do I need to know? And collecting this information can help you then moving forward into the next steps to prepare your client and their family. So the next stage is considered freshman. And the word is find. The word we associate with this is find. And this is you're going to be finding various things, starting with resources for the family and the client. If they have been given a specific diagnosis, you may be looking for support groups. If it's an Alzheimer's dementia, it might be Alzheimer's dementia support groups. What is their in-home care going to look like? Maybe you're no longer going to be enough once he or she reaches a certain point. Maybe you'll need additional resources in the home or in the living circumstance. What kind of education? If this is a new diagnosis, obviously for family and client, it could be new for you as well. So what education do you need to help direct them into the subsequent stages or phases that are coming? Equipment, are they going to need assistive devices of some sort? And that can be physical, it can be technological. So the resources, basically, that's just a few areas that you could touch on within that. Solutions for the family and the client, ways to keep the client comfortable. Is it going to be more of a hospital bed in the home versus their own bed or recliner in that type of circumstance? Solutions for the family and the client might be creating memories in spite of the health limitations. How can you help them still move forward and create happy memories in spite of such a sad and a negative diagnosis? And it might be also helping them create an environment, creating a new environment. Depending on the decline and the diagnosis, a living circumstance can become very medical and become very sterile. And there's equipment and all this. And how can you potentially help to create a warmer environment, a homey environment, if you will, to keep that for the client, so that there's less, even though you're still focusing on the diagnosis, less of that focus and a little bit more on everyday type homey, normal, if you will. It may also require you to look for find resources and solutions for you. Again, education and support for you. Depending on, how long you've had this relationship with your client, there's still, like I said, there's still that connection and that emotional connectedness. So no one is expecting you not to feel something as all of this is progressing. Who can support you? You are an equation in this. And as I mentioned earlier, the family and the client are going to lean on you. And it's important for you to have support as well, so you can continue to be a strong asset for them. It could, like I said earlier, it could be a new diagnosis for you that you're totally unfamiliar with. And this may very well be the first client that you've seen or witnessed decline. So just some things to consider. And I think it's important to always remember that you are part of this equation. While the focus may be on client and family, you are a part of this equation.
Hey, Barbara, I just want to give you a heads up that you've got just about 7 minutes left.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Okay, so the next one is entrenched, which is the word is receive. This is going to be the stage where you are basically dealing with the signs of decline. It's going to be where you start to process basically what's coming. You're in a new rhythm of care. This is the daily grind. And this is most likely to be your burnout stage. Physical, emotional, spiritual. So it's very important for you to receive support for yourself. And you may actively use the resources that you found in the previous stage. I'll touch on these just quickly, sorry. So the pragmatic stage is welcome. And this is basically where you begin to welcome those precious moments that you have with your client, the things where you might recognize moments that you will treasure, the things that you remember about this client in particular. At this point, you have a good flow and a routine of care, and you've pretty much kind of settled in as much as you can settle into an impending decline, standing witness to that. And you're basically actively taking steps to live without regret with this client, creating opportunities for them and their family. And you may even start collecting your client's wisdom, nuggets of wisdom, history, their stories, their legacy, basically. Next, we have transitioning, and this is the ultimate decline. Hospice may be involved. Your word for this is basically allow. And again, you're allowing family to lean on you. This is also the stage where you allow yourself to express your feelings, your emotions, anxieties. It may not be something that you can do in the presence of the client and their family, but it's definitely something that you need to feel your way through. And I can speak to that personally. When you feel like you need to cry, I encourage people to cry. That's a release valve. And you prepare yourself for letting go and saying goodbye. And then finally is the Godspeed stage, which is after your client has passed. Your word for this is treasure, which is treasuring the experiences, the knowledge that you've gained, the wisdom that you've taken from your client. This stage could last a while for you, or it could last only a day. Support, you could provide support to family in the days and the weeks following the passing. This is also when technically your role is ended potentially, and you may be moved on to the next client. So it's important that this is the stage where grief may not be recognized or even thought of for direct care workers. So you may be moved on to a client very quickly. I would encourage you still to take time for your emotions and to process what you've experienced. It's important to feel your way through it, and it's not something to be swallowed and pushed down, basically. So just a couple things to consider. Give yourself permission to grieve. Own your grief. Just because society may not recognize it doesn't mean you have to ignore it too. Feel your way through your grief. No two people grieve the same, so you're not doing it wrong. And it's okay to feel relief. You're sitting in a very emotionally difficult position, watching and witnessing decline, suffering, family grief. So it's okay to feel relief and basically peace, knowing that your client and their family are through this difficult time, and now everyone can process. You may not grieve for your client. Client relationships can be difficult and complex. I would encourage you not to beat yourself up. Again, everybody processes relationships differently. Okay, so I went through that pretty quickly. That's a lot to cover. Any questions, comments, discussion?
We had a question that came to me privately, and I posted the answer publicly. Okay, so the question was, will we be able to share the slides for our presentations today? And yes, I'll include the slides in the archive that I post on Tuesday, so everybody will be able to access your wisdom. And I think it would be interesting if anybody wants to share in the chat room, which of the 6 keywords really resonate with you? Ask, find, receive, welcome, allow, treasure. We'd love to hear which of those words resonate with you. And I think it's really interesting too, Barbara, and you talked about this, that the concept of the 6 stages with the keywords is very fluid. So there could be a keyword that really resonates with you today, and that keyword will change tomorrow. Today, it might be receive. And tomorrow it might be, you know what, I'm just going to allow the natural cycle of life. I'm going to really think through that the release of control over someone's cycle of life is out of my control. And I'm going to just really focus on, okay, I know the natural cycle of life is happening right now. I'm going to think through, how can I treasure these moments? Yeah, thanks everybody for sharing those in the chat room. Yeah, that's great. So treasure, allow, and treasure. Yeah, I love that word treasure. It can mean so many different things. And I also think because it's one word, you can define what that word means for you. And just as a word will feel different for you each day, the definition of that word will change for you each day. So you can think through, what do I need to receive today? What do I need to receive tomorrow? And because our week changes from a work day to a weekend, what we receive on a Thursday might be very different than what we receive on a Sunday morning. And we can really be flexible about how those words show up for us and how they help us. Curious, Barbara, we've got 1 minute left, and then we'll move to Kathy. What's the word that resonates with you today of the 6 keywords?
I would probably say, and I look, like you said, I like the word treasure. And I'm looking at it from a standpoint of my experience having been like 3 years ago. And I treasure the knowledge that I gained, because it really changed, that whole experience completely changed my perspective on how I will move forward with grief. Because, you know, I stand to lose both parents. I stand to lose my husband. I could stand to lose close friends. None of us are going to be, you know, without loss. That was just the closest experience, the closest I'd ever been to decline and loss thus far in my life. And it completely changed my perspective. Yeah, and it was just interesting because I went through all of those stages and didn't even know there were stages until I looked at this now, and I'm like, that's just powerful. In retrospect, is powerful.
Yeah. Okay, Barbara, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We're going to move to Kathy, who's actually going to help us with grief movement. So Kathy, take it away. And you are muted.
That means you can't hear every wisdom, every nugget of wisdom I'm sharing, right? I'm just going to move my chair back a little just so so you can see more of my body as we do this. It's always a challenge getting in the right position. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a flow of grief movement, which is a technique that I learned from Paul Dennison, who developed it from a grief yoga curriculum he had created. And basically, these are all these exercises are all based on movement, breath, and sound. And they're all things you can do from your chair. And the flow that I've tried to put together for you today is something that you could like sort of take each piece of and do separately if you needed a particular, a break for a few minutes or whatever. So we'll go through it as a flow, and then and then hopefully these will be tools that you'll remember. So the first thing I invite you to do is to get grounded in your seat. So feel your sit bones comfortably in your chair. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor. Sorry. Sit tall in your chair if you can. Wiggle your toes and really feel your connection to the ground. And if you'd like, you can pick an object in the room around you to focus on. Sometimes it's helpful when we're working with other people to get so involved in their things that it's hard for us to pull back and be inside our bodies. And this is a technique that sort of helps you to center yourself and go, okay, I'm here, I'm in this space, I'm okay. So you can pick an object to focus on, and I invite you to start breathing in and out. Gently breathe in, breathe out. Think about where you're holding the stress in your body. And it could be stress from grief. It could just be stress from anything. Is it in your head, your shoulders, your neck, your back, your stomach? And visualize that part of your body and just try to breathe oxygen into that area. So breathe in and breathe out. If you want, you can touch the area. If it's your head, if it's your stomach, breathe in, breathe out. You can also count your breath, which is another technique for slowing down. So I invite you to breathe in to the count of 4 and breathe out to the count of 5. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, count in your head, obviously, and breathe out. Again, breathe in to the count of 4. Breathe out. This time when you breathe in, I'm going to invite you to participate in an exercise called vibrational VU. And apparently, VU is a technique to reset your nervous system. And it's also kind of fun. So we'll breathe in, and as you breathe out, you'll say the word VU. I didn't mention this before, sorry, but you're welcome to, probably best if you're muted, and you're welcome to be on or off camera, whichever way you'd like. So breathe in, breathe out, VU. So let's try that again. Breathe in, breathe out, VU. can sort of feel how that vibration is relaxing you, right? Breathe in one more time. Breathe out. Now I invite you to take a minute and just sort of wiggle your shoulders around. And there's an exercise we can do called shoulder release, which is good for those of us who carry their stress in their shoulders. So you begin by scrunching your shoulders up next to your ears as much as you can. Breathe in, and as you breathe out, release your shoulders down. Let's try that again. Scrunch on the inhale, release on the exhale. And one more. For those of us that hold tension in our jaw, I'm going to demonstrate an exercise called jaw release. Basically, I invite you to clasp your hands in front of you like this. And we'll breathe in, and as we breathe out, we'll make whatever sound you like while shaking your hands and relaxing your jaw. So it goes like this. Breathe in. Breathe out. Unfortunately, you get to listen to my vocalizations, but breathe in and breathe out. You can also take a minute and just rub gently your jaw joint, opening your mouth just a little bit. Again, gently just rub to loosen that up. So if you've done that, let's just try that one more time and see if it makes a difference. So breathe in, breathe out. Now I invite you to loosen up your hips by sitting a little bit forward on your chair. And we're going to draw circles with our torso, sort of the way you might do with your neck. I'm not doing the neck one today because guess what? I have a stiff neck, but we'll do the torso one. So basically you start by leaning forward, go over to the right, go back, over to the other side, and forward again. Hopefully you don't have a squeaky chair like me, but you can keep going around in circles. I don't know if you feel any tension in your hips, but that might help you to like pinpoint that tension and release that. Once you've done that a few times, you can stop, take a minute, and go around in the other direction. Just lean into that circle. You can draw fast circles or slow circles, wide circles or small circles, whatever works best for you. Let's do one more and come back to center. Okay. So this next section of exercises, sorry, I'm having trouble talking today, is about finding your roar. So it's another breathing exercise where we take 3 short breaths in and then breathe out and roar. So I'll demonstrate. Breathe in, or you can do it with me. Breathe in and breathe out. Ah. Breathe in, breathe out. Ah. Feel your power on this one. Breathe in, breathe out. Ah. Now we're going to do a few things to release specific tension you might be feeling. For this exercise, I invite you to stack your hands on top of one another in front of you like this with your fists like lightly clenched. And this is called breaking the chains. So think about anything that you may feel constrained by right now that may be holding you back. Breathe in. When you breathe out, bring your elbows down to your side. And you can make sound here too if you want. So try that again. Breathe in, breathe out. Ah. And this time, put your hands in front of each other in the other configuration, different hand on top if you want. Breathe in, breathe out. Ah. Okay. You can just do a little shaking out or shoulder rolls or whatever makes you feel better after that. Now we're going to try punching it out. So maybe there's something you're feeling angry about. Maybe you don't even know you're feeling angry about it. So for this exercise, we'll breathe in. And as we breathe out, we'll punch for as long as the exhale lasts. So breathe in, breathe out, and just punch as hard as you can, as fast as you can, however you want. Think about what you're punching. Do it again. Breathe in and breathe out. And just try one more. Breathe in, breathe out. You can also say, if you happen to have a pillow handy, another thing you can do is just breathe in and whomp on that pillow as much as you want to just get that stress out. In case there's still something left that you want to get rid of in your body, bring your hands together. Make light fists with your hands. Bring them together in front of your body. Breathe in, and one at a time, push your hand in front of you and push that thing away as you breathe out. Breathe in, push that thing away. Breathe in, push it away as you breathe out. And one more, breathe in, and push it away. In case there's still anything left, we're going to learn how to sweep it away. So bring your right hand to your left shoulder or whichever you like. Breathe in and just sweep your space in front of you. Sweep away anything that's bothering you. Keep going, alternating hands. You can think about what you're sweeping, or you can just be making a clean sweep. Maybe you've come home from work and it's been a tough day and you're sweeping all of that out of your space so you can recharge over the evening. Breathe in, sweep. One more, sweep. And another technique, if maybe the sweeping isn't good for you, some people, have limited mobility or your shoulder hurts or whatever. This is a great one for that, called weeding the garden. So let's take a minute and envision that in front of you, you have a beautiful garden with your favorite flowers in them. Maybe it's hydrangeas, maybe it's tulips, maybe it's roses, although watch out for the thorns, maybe it's daisies, whatever. And just envision this beautiful garden. But you've got weeds growing in that garden. And maybe those weeds represent your coulda, shoulda, wouldas, the things you wish you'd done, the things you were on your to-do list that you didn't get done, the regrets you have. So I invite you to, one hand at a time, reach into that garden, put your hand around one of those weeds. That might be a shoulda, coulda, woulda, or whatever it is that you'd like those weeds to symbolize. You can specifically name that weed if you want. You can say, this is the thing I didn't get done today. This is the phone call I didn't make, and just pull it out and fling it back over your shoulder. With your other hand, just grab another one. Maybe this is, I should have called that doctor more often. Back over your shoulder. I should have remembered to pick that up at the grocery store. I should have visited mom yesterday. I should have written up my notes before I left work. I should have done whatever. Just take a minute and keep going. And find those weeds. Take a minute if you need to think about it. And just pull it up and throw it away. And I invite you to take as long as you need to with this one, because sometimes you'll be sitting, you'll go, okay, what are my other weeds? Oh, there's another one. There's another one. Some people don't like to name them. Some people like to just pull those weeds. Let's do a couple more rounds of weeds. If you still have some weeds left to pull, do 2 more. Now that you've pulled those weeds, just take a minute and shake it out and just give yourself a hug for all the work that you've done so far. You can knead your upper arms, you can sort of rub your shoulders, rub your arms, whatever. This is an exercise we call showing yourself love. And one of the things it does is that it releases oxytocin, just as if somewhere else were hugging you. So if you need a hug, you can give yourself a hug. If you have clients who need a hug, you can also suggest that they give themselves a hug. It's a nice exercise. Suddenly I feel warm. Just okay. The next exercise I'll lead you through is called various things. It could be called love taps. Sometimes it's called I am. And I invite you to just tap very lightly on your chest. And it's hard when you're wearing a scarf. Just tap very lightly on your chest and tune in to what you're feeling. And say it out loud. You can tune into whatever feelings you have right now. So you might want to start with, I am tired. I am angry. I am sad. I am happy. I am nervous. I am anything you're feeling. Just say them out loud. I am grieving. I am frustrated. I am, fill it in, whatever's challenging you. We'll just sit here and tap for a few more seconds. And then I invite you to turn it around and think of the times when you felt really courageous or brave or successful, and use those words. I am brave. I am proud. I am happy. I am motivated. I am powerful. And I think I just saw a comment that I just want to address about, is it normal to become emotional? Yes, you can become, any of this is just tapping into really what you're feeling. And it's fine, to feel emotional, to feel whatever you're feeling. So when you're done tapping, let's just put your hands over your heart. Just feel your heartbeat for a second. Again, breathe in, breathe out. Just tune into what your heart is feeling. I'm going to lead you in an exercise right now, since you asked about emotional, that I almost didn't do today, because I'm recently lost somebody in my family and it makes me cry sometimes. So, but I'll just do that and we'll see what happens. And I hope you'll just, I know you will give me the space if I need it. So this is an exercise called Why. And just remember that anytime that you're stumped with a question, whether it's a how do I say this, a question that can be answered on Earth, question that may not be able to be answered on Earth, you can ask the question out loud. And you just bring your hands up like this and say, why? Why? And it could be, why didn't the doctor call me back? Why did I forget to pick that thing up? Why did I make that decision? Why didn't I visit mom more often? Back to mom again. Why? You can also just ask the universe, why? Why did I lose that person? Why did that person get sick? Why? Why did that happen? Why did my friend have to suffer? Why did that loss happen? Why did that person leave us? And I find that's a very powerful thing to ask, because you don't get a lot of places you can ask why, but you can lock yourself in a room and ask why. And just doing the asking makes you feel better. And I made it, so thank you. Let's do another breathing exercise. This is called windmill. And what we'll do is, it's sort of a very meditative exercise. So we'll breathe in, bring our hands up as we breathe in. Turn your hands over, bring your hands down as you breathe out. Trick with this one is to do it very slowly. So breathe in and breathe out. And one of the things I envision is that you're doing it in water, which slows you down naturally. So think about pushing water up as you breathe in and pushing down through the water as you breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. One more, breathe in, breathe out. As long as you're in this body of water, if you are, I invite you to reach down and scoop up some water in your hands. And this is beautiful, clear, cleansing water. Some people might call it holy water. Some people might just call it refreshing, beautiful spring water. And bring your hands up over your head and basically drip the water down over your body very slowly. And release anything you're holding on to as you do that. So just bring it down and release it. Let's just do another scoop. Scoop it up. Just bring it down one more time. Feel that cool water going over your body, just taking whatever you're worried about away with it, taking your cares away with it, giving you a fresh start. I invite you now to join me in an exercise called Circle of Life. Put your right hand on your left knee, which you can't see my left knee, but trust me, it's there. And as we breathe in, bring your hand up. Think about the circle of life. Bring your hand all the way around. Take your other hand, put it on the opposite knee. Do the same thing. This is another great contemplative exercise for just thinking about how the things you're thinking about fit into the universe at large. Anytime you can get your arms moving, you're going to get more oxygen in your body. Just think about the circle of life. One more, we'll do one more of those. And in that circle of life, there's a lot of love and support out there for you, and you might not feel it. So I invite you to put your hands on your heart for a second. Think about that. And then reach out and gather in that love. Think about where that love and support is. Gather it in, bring it into your heart. Let's bring it in. Is it family? People you work with? Is it maybe a support group, therapist? A particular person in your life who's very supportive? People who support you professionally, whatever that is, just gather in that love and support. Sometimes you may have to think about where it is, but it's out there. You can find it. Just gather it in. When you've gathered it in, just hold on to it for a minute. Just take a few minutes and breathe it in. Feel it going all through your body. Feel it expanding all the way up to the top of your head, down to the tip of your toes. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes, bring your hands in front of you again to make a small bowl like this, kind of like we did when we were dipping in the water. I invite you to close your eyes and think about a time in your life when you felt really peaceful. Really peaceful. Where were you? Think about it. Where were you? Were you alone? Were you with other people? Were you in your home, or were you somewhere outdoors, in a forest, on a beach? Were the waves lapping at your feet? Were the birds singing in the trees? What did it feel like? What did it sound like? What was going on around you? What was going on inside you? And when you have that moment, when you can really see and feel that peaceful moment, say yes. Bring your hands into your heart and breathe that moment in. And really experience that moment. And when you're ready, I invite you once again to bring your hands out and make a bowl. This time, I want you to think about a moment in which you felt really powerful. And maybe it was something you'd accomplished that you had been working toward, and maybe you thought you'd never make it, but you made it. Maybe there was just something you did that was just the right thing to do at that moment. Something that made you feel your power and know that you were in the right place at the right time. You were doing the right work, whatever. Think about that moment. Who were you with? Were you by yourself? How did it feel? How did it sound? How, what could you see? What in that moment, what What memory can you conjure up from that moment that you can visualize in your head, in your hands? What were you wearing? Any of those things. When you've got that moment, you really, really can see that moment, say yes, and bring your hands to your heart. And again, breathe that moment in. Remember how that felt. Remember that if you were powerful once, you can be powerful again. When you're ready, I invite you to bring your hands out once again for one more. This time, I invite you to fill your bowl with a memory when you were courageous. When there was something that maybe you were afraid to do or that you thought you couldn't do, but you went ahead and you did it. You pushed past your fears, you pushed past whatever was holding you back, and you did it. And you felt so good because you knew how brave you were and how courageous you were. Think about where you were. Were you by yourself? Were you with other people? Who were you with? Where were you? What did it feel like? And when you have that moment, when it's in your hands and you're in your mind and you can see what that moment looks like, feel what that moment felt like, say yes, and bring that moment in to your heart and breathe that in. And I want you to remember, you can do this anytime. Anytime you need it, you can conjure up a moment that you need. You might want it to think about sometime when you felt loved, sometime when you felt, happy, protected, whatever. It's right there. So I invite you now to spread your arms wide, and you can lift them up to the sky if you want, if that's comfortable, and repeat the affirmation. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be content. And again, just bring it in for a hug. Bring it in for a hug. And thank you for being courageous and for doing those movements with me. How are you?
Yeah, we can ask Kathy if she doesn't mind just putting a little list together, and I'll include that in the archive. And because we've archived this, you can also watch these movements with Kathy and do them again whenever you need to. Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. This was fabulous.
Great, thank you.
We're going to take an 8-minute break. So come back at top of the hour and we'll go into our second hour. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Again, thanks for being here. We're going to talk about some plans for healing and recovery. About 2.5 years ago, I started thinking through what happens when we've had significant loss and we're also experiencing those secondary pieces of loss that happens. So someone dies, we think about taking care of that big loss of someone's death. But there's other losses that happen as well. Someone has died, now there's a void in your day. Someone has died, now there's a change in your routine. Someone has died, and now there's a change in your support system. I thought, what is it that we can do that can help us with the big losses and then all those secondary losses that we have to manage? So I started thinking about what's a process we could use. I am uncomfortable in chaos, and I go to plans to manage the chaos. I have a theory that we for every worry, we need a plan. So as I really thought through what's the plan around healing, this is what I came up with. And it's a 3-step process that helps us name what we're healing through, what we're going to heal with, what's the strategy that helps, and where are we going to go with our healing? And typically it's to a different emotion. So we're healing through, we're healing with, and we're healing to. And it's to help us with the big loss and the smaller losses. So let's think through, what are you healing through? Some ideas for you. It could be that you are healing through loss, like a death, but there are other losses we experience in our life. A loss of a job, a loss of a friendship, a loss of an opportunity. We could be disappointed about something that's happening in our life. We might be experiencing a change. It could be a change in a client. So perhaps a client has died. There's a new client that you're managing and you're thinking, wow, this is so different. I had this great routine with my previous client, and now I have to figure out a new routine, and it's harder than I thought. And I don't like this change. I'm grieving what was because what is hard. We might have particular difficulties that we're managing. We could have difficult relationships, difficult situations, difficult days. We could have challenges that we think this is just really big and I'm not sure how I'm going to figure this out. And certainly because we are caring, burnout could be something that we're experiencing. There's the stress of our workday, there's the stress of our days, there's the stress of our life, the stress of our relationships. And certainly we have worries. We have worries about our next moment, our tomorrow, the future. We could see an ending coming, and we're starting to feel the impact of that ending. And I included one at the end that I really feel like I have tried to heal through, and that's weight gain. My parents were both critically ill at the same time in 2015. I was in great shape in the spring of 2015. By October of that same year, I couldn't fit in my clothes. The stress had caused so much weight gain. So not only are we trying to be our best at work and in our family, sometimes the toll of that turns into stress that adds those extra pounds, and that hurts. And that's a loss too. Thinking about it, we lost our good shape. We lost the clothes we could fit into. We lost the experience of feeling good about shopping, and now we dread it because of that number, that size we have to fit into. So these are just some ideas about what we could be healing through. And the idea is that it gives you a perspective, an intention, a vision about what hurts right now. So it's a fill in the blank statement. I am healing through a really challenging situation with a sister, for instance, or a difficult experience with a client. I'm healing through this particular experience. We want to move into what can we use to help us with the healing? And that's the next part of the process. What are you healing with? What are the strategies that you are going to use that can help heal? So Kathy's presentation we just went through is healing. So I might say, I am healing through my mom's death with movement. And then I use Kathy's movement to help in the mornings when I feel the intensity of the loss. I might also use words. I might talk out a loss with a friend. I might write about it in my journal. I might heal through connections. So it could be a grief support group or an event like this where I feel so connected to all of you. And it gives me good company to know that grief isn't an experience just I go through. We all go through it. I might feel better listening to music. And it could be that I listen to certain songs that my brother enjoyed, for instance, or that my mother loved. So I connect to those who have died through the music I listen to. I might heal through prayer. In many ways, I felt that why exercise that Kathy helped us through is something of a prayer. Why? And the ability to actually ask in a prayer can be comforting. I might be so stressed out by the company of people in my life that I have to heal through solitude. I need to give myself a little quiet space. Yeah, dancing is a great way to use movement for healing. And I'd love for you guys to share in the chat room, what are the different strategies that you use that help with healing? There are times where I'll diffuse essential oils. I'll pick a particular aroma, and that helps me feel connected. The other piece of this is I feel like I'm doing something to take care of myself. Spending time in nature is a beautiful way to go through healing. Yes, the birds and the squirrels, and nature reminds us of that cycle of life, that there's a continuity in our life that's reflected in nature. And there are sounds and movement in nature, like watching the wind move through the trees, that can be healing. And certainly time with a pet can be definitely healing. Oftentimes people will say, get out and take a walk or whatever. And there are times when the grief is exhausting, and I feel better if I do a movement like diffuse essential oils, rather than thinking about getting my body out the door. I want to get my body out the door, but it might not be ready because the exhaustion from the grief is just too much. I might heal with boundaries, thinking about, when am I angry about someone who's insensitive to my grieving process? So what's the boundary I'll set with that individual or in that relationship? I might think about rituals I could add in my day. It could be a ritual to start my morning, to end my day, to break up my day. And the ritual could be around, I take some moments of quiet reflection about what's hurting because I miss what I used to do with my mom, or how much I enjoyed time with my brother, whatever it might be. Yeah, a morning routine, walking the dog and listening for the birds is a beautiful ritual. We can also think about, how can we adjust our days so that it gives us more space to take care of ourselves in this particular season of grief for us, rather than powering through with what we all used to do, with all the activities and commitments and responsibilities, and thinking, what are the adjustments about what's possible for me given the exhaustion of my grief? So it could be, I'm healing through my grief by adjusting the length of my day. I'm going to go to bed earlier. I'm going to sleep in 15 minutes later. What can we adjust so that we feel like we are taking care of what hurts right now? Okay, so I'm healing with, and again, that's the strategy that we use to help us with the healing. And then the third step is to think about, where am I going to go with this healing? And it's this idea that we want to go from what hurts to what can feel better. And I want to mention, Corey, sometimes watching cooking shows on TV or junk TV in general is healing as well. I agree with that strategy. Again, it's this idea that sometimes we have to remove ourselves from what is hurting us. And sometimes it's just giving ourselves a little bit of time on the couch with something that does not require a lot of our attention, a deep mental exercise. And cooking is, I think, a relaxing motion to watch. So in previous events that we've held, Kathy has talked about the flow. So there's certain activities that we engage in that get us so focused on what we're doing that we forget about what's hurting or stressing us out. And I think about that movement of cooking, chopping the ingredients, measuring things, pouring them into a bowl, mixing the bowl, stirring the pot, Those are meditative movements. And if we're not doing it, just watching someone can help. You know, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but for some reason, I started watching J-Lo and her makeup videos. I'm almost embarrassed to say that out loud, but that is very relaxing for me. There's something about the way she takes care of her skin, the way she applies her makeup is very relaxing for me. And I am not someone who uses makeup that much. But that's very relaxing for me. So it takes me out of a stress or a worry. And then I just think, well, what's J-Lo doing with her skincare routine? And it makes me feel better. So that's a strategy for me. Okay, so when we think about what we're healing to, it could be a feeling of peace, a feeling of comfort, forgiveness of ourselves, of others, of life, of a disease process, of imperfect timing, of an unexpected loss. There's lots to forgive when we're in a process of grieving. Maybe we want to work into a feeling of acceptance rather than resisting what life is. We think, you know what, that's really depleting my energy. I'd much rather move into a place of, I'm going to accept life as it is right now, because that gives me the energy to move into my next moment. We might think we want to heal to a new way of looking at situations, a new way of being in situations, a new way of organizing our day. It could be that we decide, you know what, I want to heal to letting go. I've been holding on. I just want to let go. And it could be that we're also healing to love of self, love of life, love of possibilities, love of nature, love of others in our life. So feel free to share in the chat room what you think about when you're healing to. Where do you want to go with your healing? Where do you want to land? I am healing to. Present in the moment, I love that. And I also was thinking of calm, which is a version of present in the moment. I don't want to have the anxiety in my body. I want to have the calm in my presence. Less mental chatter. Thank you, Barbara. That's what it is too, that calm. Yeah. So here's how it could work. Oh, I love that. Healing to stay healthy. I love that. Yes. So at work, a colleague makes an insensitive comment that you think, oh my gosh, that really hurt. So the process for that could be, I am healing through insensitivity with words so I can be assertive. So I think, you know what, that really hurt. I'm not sure what to say now, but I'm going to think through what to say the next time someone says something insensitive to me. So I don't have to go back to what happened, but I can think about being prepared for if it happens again. So I'm going to be assertive about expressing that an insensitive comment hurt me. And then I'll feel better. I won't feel powerless to the situation. Here's another example. So let's say you get together with friends every Saturday morning for a weekly Zoom check-in call, and it's very important to you. You feel very supported. You feel like you've got allies in your life, and they mean a lot to you. For whatever reason, you just can't get to that Zoom call this weekend. So it could be that you're healing through disappointment, because that's disappointing that you can't attend something that's really important to you. And then you think, you know what, I'm going to just take a daily walk. I'm just going to take my walk and I'm going to let go. So it's this idea of moving to stay healthy. I'm disappointed. I'm going to go for a walk to walk out my disappointment because I want to let go of the disappointment. you could dig a little deeper into the disappointment. So it might be you feel this disappointment because, oh my gosh, it feels like you're always giving something up. So maybe you have to give up that Zoom call this weekend because you have to be available to help someone in the family, or you're taking an extra shift at work. And it feels like you've just made so many sacrifices, and the sacrifices just keep adding up. And that's the disappointment. You might start to think, when is it my turn? When is it my turn? So you could be a little more specific about this healing plan. And it could sound like this: I'm healing through disappointment with my daily walk, while I give thanks to my friends who understand me so that I can find peace. So during the walk, you're moving to stay healthy, and you're staying connected to the love your friends have for you. So even though you couldn't make that call, you can still stay connected to the love. So you are fully honest with yourself about why it's disappointing. Gosh, I have to give all this up all the time. Okay, I'm going to take a walk. And while I walk, I'm going to be grateful for these friends I have in my life. I know I'm going to connect with them next week. They understand me. And because I can stay connected to these friends, I'm going to find peace. And I'm going to stay peaceful. I want to mention something else that I didn't suggest in terms of a strategy, but oftentimes a strategy I use is asking a good question. And I don't ask it of anyone other than the universe. So for instance, I had a very difficult situation a few years ago, and it really would stress me out worrying about how this was going to work out, because it didn't seem like it was going to work out for me. And I decided to ask a question. And the question that I would ask while I walked was, in what wonderful, lucrative way will this situation work out for me? So I would feel the stress of the situation. Then I would think, okay, go out for a walk. I'd go for the walk. And as I walked, I would say, in what wonderful, lucrative way will this situation work out for me? And the situation worked out in a lucrative, wonderful way, which you would have never thought. If I had told you what the situation was, you would think, oh, this is just going to be terrible for you. But it worked out. So ask an open-ended question. Ask it to the universe. I actually have a Sunday newsletter where I pose a question on Sundays to help us set an intention for what we can focus on during the week. So you can subscribe to that newsletter if you're interested, or you could join us at Caring Our Way, which is our community. I post the question there every Sunday. If you go to the general tab, you'll see Sunday question, and you'll see the questions that I pose every Sunday with the idea that we can set an intention for what we want to manage or create or take care of during the week. So you're creating this plan with strategies. So you might have a strategy for each hurt. So for instance, that strategy of the walk and the question was very specific to that situation. So you might create specific strategies for specific situations. And you might think, you know what, I'm not sure if this is going to help, but I'm going to try it. And then just pay attention to whether or not the strategy helped with that particular feeling of loss. What you want to create is this library of strategies. So when you feel the grief and the loss, you also can look to strategies that can help you. So you could visualize a healing plan by using stickies. So maybe you have the back of a door that's in your bedroom, and you divide it into 3 categories. I'm healing through, I'm healing with, I'm healing to. And then you have different colors stickies for each of the categories. And then you just play with the stickies to come up with the plan for each hurt. It could be lists that you put on the fridge. Again, it's 3 categories, and you just play with what you connect with through your different strategies. Or you could start journaling and journal what you're healing through, what you're using to heal with, and then what you're healing to. There is a one-page document that I created that helps you also list out your strategies. I have a Kindle book for different healing plans, and the Kindle book is free today and tomorrow. And I'll put a link in the chat room for you if you're interested in actually a journal around these healing plans. So that's around grief. And then there's another plan for recovery. So thinking through, how am I going to recover when the day just really wore me out? My body is hurting from this. So it could be I'm recovering from a long, physically draining day with a bath because I want to recover to relaxation. So it's the same process, it's just a little bit different use. So there's the healing plan for your grief, and then there's the recovery plan for difficult situations, long days, caregiving crises, other family crises. And it's this idea that we want to give a little bit of time to recovery because we don't want to keep powering through. So that example I gave of my weight gain, it's because I kept powering through all this stress. And if I had given myself a little bit of time to relax at the end of the day, it could have helped with my stress management and my weight management. I want to mention that these two plans, a plan for healing and a plan for recovery, are also free courses in our community, Caring Our Way. So you can join us on Caring Our Way and then enroll in these classes, which give you these plans, as well as an assessment you can take if it's easier for you to think through by actually being guided through the plan. Okay. And that's daily healing and recovery plans. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I think we're good. And I think what we'll do is move into Kathy's presentation to close out our day together. So Kathy, when you're ready, feel free to share your screen. And while Kathy is getting ready, feel free to ask any questions or share any other insights about our daily healing and recovery plans. How will you use them? When will you use them? What resonated with you about the plans? Okay, and Kathy, if you're ready, we'll move to you now. Kathy, I'm not sure if you're...
I think I'm unmuted now.
Yeah, yes, there you go.
I think I'm sharing my screen. I think it's an amazing moment. So here we are.
It's an amazing moment. It's an amazing moment.
Well, thank you, Denise and Barbara, for their wonderful presentations today. And I'm just gonna, I was really happy to see that we had so much overlap, which is nice. And I'm going to talk a little bit now about recognizing grief in others. So I do have trouble with advancing the slides, so please bear with me. I'll just tell you a little bit about me. I was a part-time caregiver for my mother who had dementia and lived in 2 care facilities during the last 5 years of her life, and a respite caregiver for a friend who had motor neuron disease, which may have been ALS, and he eventually had paid care at home. And in terms of recent griefs, my significant recent losses include my mother, which was not that recent, but was significant. My mother-in-law, who passed 5 years ago, was also in a facility. My friend who passed 5 years ago, and my younger brother who passed 6 weeks ago. So I'm a certified caregiving consultant, facilitator, educator, advocate, and I am also trained as a grief support specialist, grief movement guide, and have a couple of degrees from the work I've done so far in my life. And I do work with Denise in the Caregiving Years Training Academy as well. So we've talked a lot today about what grief is, and the American Psychological Association says that grief is the anguish experienced after significant loss, usually the death of a beloved person. I have a really broad view of grief. And my view is whenever there's change, your body processes a loss. You may also feel a gain. For example, you may relocate for a new job. So great, you have a new job. That's a really positive change. But there's also the loss of the place, the house, the people you left behind. And whenever there's loss, grief can occur. So my philosophy is that grief follows a change in expectations. So I think Denise discussed causes of grief. These are some of the ones that I think are really significant. Of course, loss of a loved one, major cause of grief, and the one that society really recognizes the most. Loss of a pet, also. Loss of a pet companion can be really significant. Loss of or change in a job. Loss of independence. If you're ill, if you're aging, if you have a disability that or require a disability in particular, that can be significant. Loss of or change in a relationship, which could occur through death or could occur for a number of reasons. Loss of home or relocation. Changing your lifestyle could be because of any of the above, but also could be just because, maybe you're retiring and the money flow in your house changes and your lifestyle changes. And a change in your health, if you're suddenly diagnosed with something where you really need to pay more attention to your health, where you're undergoing treatments, where you have, daily care you need to take, that can be significant. And then let's just think about what we've been through, right? We've all been through the pandemic, or we're still in some ways in the pandemic. And how many of these do we experience? The pandemic is just really a source of pervasive grief everywhere you go. And I think the effect on that really can't be overlooked. The effect of that on us, sorry. So what does grief look like? It's difficult to recognize grief in others unless you know the person's experienced a loss. Even then, you may not be able to tell. So somebody may be crying, somebody may be smiling, even though they're sad. Somebody may be angry. Somebody just may be lost in thought. Grief can look like a lot of things. What are the characteristics of grief? And you may see this, particularly in people you care for, and you may also recognize them in yourselves. And really, it's everything. Somebody may be sad and crying. Somebody may just have a lack of affect, not responding to anything. There may be anger. There may be just withdrawal. Somebody could lose their appetite. Somebody could crave comfort food. Somebody could become more anxious. Maybe people have difficulty concentrating. Hard to read a book sometimes, hard to watch a TV show when you've had a recent loss. People may become agitated, just really trying to get things done, trying to, particularly trying to clean out a house, trying to do whatever, and just a lot of agitation. Some people just may become very rigid. This is the protocol. This is how we're doing things. This is how I want things to happen. No variation. Some people may become really fatigued and tired, and some people may have insomnia, not be able to sleep. Some people may get sick easy. Your resistance is down, you're catching everything that's coming around. Some people may become forgetful. Some people may get compulsive about, just things, again, that obsession thing that, this has to happen. I need to hear from you every week. I need to talk to my friends every week, need to talk to my surviving relatives every week, whatever, or obsessed. Often you'll see this sometimes if, particularly if a mother loses a child, you'll see them obsess about the safety of the other children. Where are you going? Don't do that. It's dangerous. Be careful driving. I don't want you going to the big city, whatever. Sometimes you see regression. Particularly, I know in children, sometimes you'll see this, a child who's, toilet trained or feeding themselves or whatever, if there's a loss in the family, suddenly that's all out the window. You have to start over again. And sometimes it's just a feeling that something's not right. You feel it yourself, or you look at someone, you go, something's not right. And I'll just share that for me, it's kind of interesting that the characteristics, because, when Denise was talking about weight gain, the craving comfort food and weight gain thing was big for me. And I didn't realize how much weight I gained after my friend died 5 years ago. After my mom passed away, my sister lives in California. She called me and said, "So what are you eating? Have you eaten?" I said, "Yeah, I'm on my second pack of Oreos." She said, "Put the Oreos down and go get some real food." So basically that's one of my ways of coping with grief. I'll share a difficulty concentrating story, or maybe I can think it's a difficulty concentrating story. And if you know me, you may have heard the story that right after my friend died 5 years ago, I was in the middle of preparing the budget for the organization that I work at. And I made a $120,000 mistake in like a $1.2 million budget, which is pretty significant. Fortunately, somebody caught it. But knowing that I did that, when my mother-in-law died, I also went, watch out for the mistake. And I made one, and I caught it. And actually, where my brother died the same time of year as my friend, so we're in budget season again. And I made my assistant check everything I did for budget, and we both made a mistake. So I guess no one's without mistakes, but it was interesting that I was like, you have to check this, you have to watch for this, because I can't concentrate on things like this when I'm grieving. And I was going to give the anger example. So my brother died in middle of December, and I don't remember quite how this happened, but I was half asleep, and I was using a cold pack, a gel-filled cold pack, because I get aches and pains when I'm grieving. I get stiff, I get aches and pains. It's terrible. And the cold pack wasn't doing its job, and I pounded the gel out of it, I will say. And the interesting thing was that if you do pound them enough, they will break. And no one in my house actually even looked askance at it. They just sort of ignored me. I realized, like, I just destroyed the thing. I threw it away. I cleaned up the mess. I went back to bed, and nobody said a word. So I guess, I don't know if that means they're tolerant or what, but so you just never know. I know a lot of people go, "You don't look like the sort of person who do that," but I am. So these are all the characteristics you might see in somebody. And then if you're working, so you may recognize them in yourself. You may see them in the person you're working with, person you're caring for, one of your clients. And one thing to think about is, what is your client's grief history? You may or may not know what it is, but anybody, anywhere may have just recently experienced any of these things. Loss of multiple loved ones, family and friends. It may have been a long time ago loss, a recent loss, still may be affecting them. Loss of pets, loss of their family structure, which may have come from the loss of the loved one, or may just be, there's a divorce in the family. Suddenly there's a daughter-in-law out of the picture, or, somebody moves away. Loss of independence and mobility, big one, especially for people who are ill or aging. You may not be able to control coming and going as you please anymore. You may not be safe for you to drive. That's a huge thing. Loss of health and physical ability, again, caused by illness or disability. My friend was no longer able to do a lot of the activities of daily living unassisted. That was a big loss, obviously, big amount of grief around that. And, just losing your health is huge. Suddenly going from, especially if you've been healthy for, most of your life, suddenly having a chronic illness is huge. My father never adjusted to having type 2 diabetes, just wasn't willing to accept it, And there's a loss of hope and dreams that comes, with all of those things, but also with aging. Just going back for a minute, you lose the hopes and dreams, that you and your partner, or you and your sibling, or you and whatever had together, and those are gone, or they have to change. But the other thing that I just came across recently, which is a whole other piece, is that as people get older, they realize that it's less likely they're going to accomplish their dreams, and their hopes change. And someone recently spoke to me about their mother, who's 99, who's realizing that her time is limited. She's been perfectly healthy up to this point, completely healthy, no medications, no hospitalizations, nothing. And suddenly she's worrying about every little pain. And, it's the loss of hope that you have, 10 years left or however many years left. Because when you're 99, the probability is that you don't have a lot of time left. And then, there's the grief history of the pandemic. We lost some people who were close to us. Our lifestyle changed, our freedom changed. The ability to really walk out your door and go somewhere and not think about, is it a big group? Do I have to worry about this? What's the probability in my area of me getting COVID, et cetera, even now is huge. In addition, if your patient or client's in a care facility, there's a whole other level of grief that's going on with that transition for some people, not for everybody. But I would say for most people, there's a loss of whatever was home to them and a loss of belongings, because you can't take everything with you. It's a loss of your usual routines. Maybe the person's used to getting up in the morning, having coffee, having lunch at a certain time. Suddenly everything is regulated. It's a loss of privacy, because you may be in a shared room. And even if you're in a private room, people will come in and out of your room anytime. There's a loss of agency. You no longer can really get up and say, I'm going to do this today. I'm going to make this happen. Even if it's just, I'm going to make myself a cup of coffee. You don't have that ability to do that anymore. There's a loss of their community. They may not be seeing their friends anymore, the friends that they've seen for years. And there's a loss of interactions with loved ones and friends. So, again, you may see, you may not be seeing your friends. Possibly people stop by and brought you groceries every week. They're not doing that anymore. And they'll still come to visit, but it's different. It's all different. And just to make that, just to be a little more, another layer of that is that those losses may trigger past losses and past griefs. So somebody who lost their home when they were a child, or maybe lost their home when they were younger, or was in foster care, might see moving to a care facility as really traumatic. Depression survivors, like my parents, who are collectors or hoarders and who liked having, everything out where they could see it, might feel really bereft at losing their collections and things. Someone who's watched a loved one die of an illness might be strongly affected by being in a place where that happens frequently, where the people you've eaten dinner with the night before might not be there in the morning. Someone who's had their privacy violated through assault or having something stolen might be really wary of the lack of privacy and the lack of boundaries in a facility. Just an aside, my mother attacked a security guard one night because she was wandering, and they got a security guard to bring her back. But in her mind, she was having her purse stolen. And my 125-pound, 5'3" mother sent a 6'4" security guard to the emergency room. So people can really be, very threatened by that kind of thing. And aging or ill people might be experiencing, as I just discussed, anticipatory grief at the end of their own lives and memories of seeing their loved ones age and die. So there's a lot that can go on with people as they're experiencing, these crises in their lives, and I don't think a lot of recognition is given to it. The other thing that we don't talk a lot about in our society is about what you do when you're with someone who's grieving, and all those things add up to a lot of loss. What can you do? So we like to think we can fix things, and you can't fix it, and you can't make it go away. But the one thing you can do is you can listen. You can listen with your ears, you can listen with your eyes, you can observe, you can just listen with every part of your body. You can provide support and care. You can create a safe space for someone to grieve, and you can respect their process. In our culture, we tend to think that grief is around someone losing someone, and if you're working, you get 3 days to mourn it, or maybe you get a couple of weeks before people expect you to be better. But grief is a lifelong process, so you can respect the process the person's going through it for as long as it takes. So one thing you can do for people is to create space for their grief. So accept and respect their grief. Understand that they may be experiencing grief. Ask non-judgmentally, what's on your mind, or how are you feeling? I think one of the things that one of the ways I feel boxed in when I'm grieving is if someone knows I've experienced a loss and then looks at me with that face of concern and goes, "So how are you doing?" And some days I'm okay and I want to be okay, right? And some days I'm not. So if you ask just a non-judgmental question like, "What's on your mind today?" or "How are you feeling today?" I think you give people that leeway to be okay some days and not be okay other days. Actively listen to what they have to say. Pay attention. How are they saying it? What are they telling you? What's their body like when they're telling you? What's their voice like? Are they crying? Do they want to cry? Just listen to what they have to say and actually let the words sink in. Acknowledge and validate their feelings. "Oh, it sounds like you're feeling angry today." Or, "Oh, that must have been so hard for you. You just had so much courage to get through that." Encourage them to tell you about or show you photos of the person or pet they lost. Often there's a predominant feeling in our society, right, that, when somebody's lost somebody, we don't talk about that because it'll just upset them. Do you think they're not thinking about that? That's all they're thinking about. So let them know that you want to know. Denise and I do a grief, care, and share. And one of the most rewarding times is when we say to people, "Tell us about the person you lost." Because people really want to talk about that person. They don't want that person to disappear. They don't want the memories of that person to disappear. They don't want people to stop knowing about that person or their pet. They want to tell you about their dog. They want to tell you about how long they had their dog and all the experiences they had together, or their cat. So listen to that. You can find specific ways to assist and support them while they grieve. Maybe the person they lost is the person who used to take out the trash, so they need help doing that. Maybe the person they lost is the person that used to come visit with them and read to them or do puzzles with them. So maybe there's a way to find someone who can fill that void for them. Consider the context of any unusual or unexpected behavior. Again, as I said, when I, whomped the heck out of the gel cooling pad, fortunately, my family was like, "She's grieving." I'm sure they were like, "Oh, she's angry. Oh, she's angry because her brother died. All right, it's okay." Or I'm really grateful that when I made those mistakes in the budget, people didn't go, "What's wrong with you?" They went, "It's okay." Somebody actually very kindly said, "It's okay, I'll take over," which was the best thing. And be prepared for sudden outbursts of grief. Even 2 years later, 5 years later, something will trigger tears. And suddenly there's just like, sobbing will come on. I've had it happen to me. You just can't stop sobbing. And that happens. It's normal. It's okay. Be aware of and respect cultural and religious beliefs. Some people believe in heaven. Some people don't believe in heaven. Some people believe we're coming back. Some people don't. Some people believe the spirits are around us and some people don't. So whatever your client is believing, support that. May not be your belief, but it's their belief and they have a right to have that belief. And understand that people move forward with grief, but they don't move through it. It never goes away. So again, as I said, people go through an acute period of grieving. They then, go through a chronic period of grieving, which lasts probably as long as they can remember the person or until they pass away, which is the reality of it. My mother-in-law lost her husband 49 years before she died. And every time his name came up, she cried. So people just live with it, and that's okay. You can help people take a break from grief. And Denise was talking about, about flow and about doing things that just give your mind a chance to relax. So maybe a change of scenery. Somebody might want to sit outside or take a little short trip in the car, watch a favorite TV show, cooking show, or a movie, or listen to music. Create something, knit, crochet, draw, color, write. And one note I just want to make is that if you have someone who wants to talk about their memories, write something, do a journal, and isn't able to write, can always use voice recognition software for that, which will capture their thoughts. And you can then print it out and they have that if they want that. But don't let not writing stop people from expressing what they want to express. Maybe some activity. We talked about cooking or jigsaw puzzles, playing a game, move, take a walk, play catch, do chair yoga, do the movement exercises, connect with others through group activities or support groups, and do for others. Sometimes you can get somebody interested in, like, do you want to make a drawing for your granddaughter? Or, oh, we're doing this charity project where we're, making art to put, in another unit, or to take to a nursing home or whatever. Do you want to help do that? Thinking about other people can give you a really great break. Now, of course, in all of this, I also want to say, be alert for signs of depression, which, as healthcare workers, is something to look out for. There can be a period during grief where there's a lot of despair and there's a lot of sadness. But as you know, clinical depression is a completely different thing. And usually grief becomes less acute over time. So be aware of and seek attention for the person, or evaluation at least, for any signs of depression, which might include persistent and severe changes in personality, inability to participate in activities of daily life, won't get out of bed, won't eat, ever. Feelings of hopelessness that last a long time, and talk of suicide or self-harm. So for any of those, you would definitely not want to ignore that, and you'd want to consult a professional. You may be the professional. And another note that I just want to say, so bringing it back to you, is that we all grieve. So you have your own grief that you're dealing with, that you're handling, that you've handled in a particular way. Many griefs, probably. So it's good for you to take a moment and reflect and consider, what were the major losses in your life? Sometimes I did an exercise once, and sometimes this is really helpful, to do a grief map. What were the major changes in your life? And I looked at that and went, never thought that was one of them, but it was. My family relocated when I was 6. It was huge. How did and does grief affect you? And how would you have wanted to be supported? What do you want people to say to you? I said something to someone recently about, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to do that. I had a loss in my family. They said, oh, that wasn't why you forgot it. I thought, yeah, it was why I forgot it. Honor my grief. I'm telling you, so think about the ways you'd want to be supported. People don't know what to say when you're grieving somebody. Think about what you would have liked them to say, and use that to guide you in what you say to somebody else. Take care of yourself. That's what we've talked about all day. You're managing your own grief history. Some things may trigger you. Being present for other people's grief can be exhausting. Identify, as Denise pointed out, identify what gives you comfort and relieves your stress. Find a supportive friend or group, and create and follow a plan for taking care of you. And most of all, breathe. We practiced many breathing exercises today, so practice those. Don't lose those. I participate in several activities online that you're welcome to join, and these all can be linked to through caringourway.com. One is an unhurried conversation on grief and loss once a month, where we don't necessarily talk about grief and loss like in the global sense, and we do share our griefs and losses, but really the point is to make a space where everyone can share their grief, everyone can talk about their grief, and we listen while people are talking. I'm starting a Grief During Caregiving text chat, which you're welcome to join, which will be on the first Saturday of every month at 11 a.m. Again, these are Eastern time. And Denise and I co-moderate a Grief Care and Share on the second Friday of every month at 1 o'clock. And my contact information is here. My website is called caregriefheal.com. And this will go out, so I'm sure you can find me there. So I'll just stop sharing my screen now so I can look at your faces again and see if anybody has any questions or comments about any of that.
Feel free to post any questions in our chat, and I'm going to post the directions for your CEUs. So if you were here for our entire event, you can earn 2 CEUs. So you're going to pay a flat fee of $20. You're going to pay that flat fee first, and then you'll be directed to your evaluation form. You have 3 business days to complete the evaluation form. And then we send out CEU certificates around 10 business days after you've submitted your evaluation. So there's the link to submit your payment. I do want to mention, if you are not here for CEUs, we do want to know what you thought, so I'm going to post the evaluation form in the chat room as well. Kathy, I thought that was really helpful to be more compassionate about people who seem to have big emotions. And I think about that with my dad. He's been someone who really had a lot of anger throughout his life. And it didn't occur to me until we started doing our grief support groups that actually that was his grief that was speaking. And it just kind of changed how I perceive him. You know, we have another resource too, that is a PDF of a free workbook around working, caring, and grieving. And I'll post that in the chat room too. You're welcome to download that as well. And we have a survey for direct care workers. And I'll post information about that as well. So if you're a direct care worker, we'd love for you to share a little bit about your work with us. And if you know direct care workers, feel free to share that link with them. We'll post the recordings of today's event on Tuesday on our YouTube channel. If you registered through Eventbrite, there's an email that's going out in just about 25 minutes that also includes a link to our YouTube channel. So you can check that on Tuesday for the archive. I thought this was really helpful today. And I hope you guys did too. And I'll mention one other thing too. You know, there's actually, there's a coupon code too. If you're interested in any of our training programs, I'll include that in here as well. And if this is a program that you think would be helpful in your workplace, feel free to reach out to us and we can tell you how we can create a healing morning for your workplace. And I'll include a link to my email address there as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat room or anything else that you need from us today. I feel very good about the rest of today. I just feel like I'm going to keep your support and kindness with me. And I hope that you feel that way as well, that you'll keep our support and kindness with you the rest of today and through the weekend. Okay, I think we'll close. Thank you all so much. It was really wonderful to connect with you today. And thanks to our presenters, Barbara and Kathy, you guys were great. Okay, thanks everyone.